What's up, my YouTube family, my social media family? Once again, this is your host, Has B, and welcome to the Fighters Corner, all right, where all fighters have a voice. Thank you for joining with your boy. I appreciate you guys. We are still finishing up on this series of Rising Stars before we go into the Legends. And I know a lot of people are waiting for the Legends. That's going to be something great. It's going to be my top 10 legends, okay? And of course, we're going to have some honorable mentions in there for you guys out there. And hey, let's talk about it. Go in the chat. Let me know who's your top 10 boxers of all times. And also let me know what your top 10 MMA fighters of all time. That'd be great. That'd be great to see. All right. So we have a very talented brother here. I mean, definitely known all over the UK, and this is none other than Daniel Dubois. I did a video coverage and reaction to his sister, Caroline Dubois, who is just an amazing fighter, predator. You know, I think I gave her the nickname, the Predator. So Daniel Dubois, big boy. He's 6'5". You know, he walks around between 240, 250, and doing very well. You know, he already has a very good record. I believe he's 22 wins. He has 3 losses, but he's definitely a slugger. You know, I think Daniel has like a 78-inch reach. He has some good agility. He's a power striker, and we're going to take a look and get some reaction on Mr. Daniel Dubois. All right. Thank you once again. Hey, click and subscribe if you like this type of content of reacting to these great athletes. And once again, I am a retired fighter myself, and I just love the sports, love the combative sports, and I want to give them a platform to be recognized again and also let them have a voice. All right. So let's take a look at this coverage.
Daniel Dubois is maybe boxing's most vicious in recognition.
Looking carefully, and now, should be. And another one. Touching with the left touch, followed by the right tap, and he goes down.
But outside of his violent personality inside the ring, he's quite a strange character outside of it. But the psychology of Daniel Dubois may be more fascinating and also more tragic when you look into it. The inspiration behind this video came when I read an article written by Don McRae, who's an exceptional boxing writer. McRae interviews Dubois and goes into his mentality going into fights and his story. McRae's summary of Dubois' character is that Dubois is a deeply reserved world heavyweight champion who still lives with his formidable and mysterious father. He's 27 and a wrecking force in the ring. But Dubois often appears more like a shy teenager who's still tentative beneath the giant shadow of his domineering father's stand. His father always told him that he would become undisputed world heavyweight champion, and Dubois says, "I believed in everything he said." The words, the way he said it, he was so sure about it, and I believed and thought, yes, I'm going to do this. It's not just talk, we've been working really hard. When I was 7 years old, I was grinding my fists down to the bone for it. Dubois holds up his bunched fists to show me again the deep scars that pockmark his knuckles. They were made from all the push-ups I did, with his knuckles pressed down against the floor. I can be proud of these marks. They've got me out of trouble a few times. Dubois once told me that when he was a kid, his dad made him do press-ups for hours. What was his record? The big man grins. We never counted the push-ups, we counted the hours. Maybe 4, 5 hours. We did some crazy stuff. Daniel Dubois' father, Stan Dubois, or Dave Dubois, he's got 2 names apparently. Already we can tell this is an extreme case of a father forcing his son into sports. It's normal for a father to introduce their son to boxing, but to make him do press-ups for hours on end from the age of 6 is a bit too extreme, and perhaps even more concerningly, Dubois and 6 of his siblings were kept at home by their father and never went to school, and he still seems stunted outside the ring. When I ask if he's finding a way to dig his own person while still listening to his dad, Dubois looks confused. I don't even know what you mean by that question. I talk again about the deep influence his dad exerts over him and his boxing career. It has helped in the ring, but surely he wants to make his own choices away from boxing. I guess you could say that, but in the boxing sense, we're a team. Knowing that Dubois never went to school, never learned to socialise, and all he's known is doing rigorous exercise, under the promise of becoming heavyweight champion. It begins to make a lot more sense as to why Dubois is the way he is.
At the press conference, I just feel like you should never let anyone take an inch because I'd end up taking them off. You know what I mean, Dad? Sorry? That's it.
If you've seen Dubois speak, it follows the same pattern every time. Without trying to sound mean, he seems a bit empty-headed.
What is Alexander Usyk's biggest weakness?
We're gonna expose that. We're gonna drag it out of it, whatever it is.
What is his biggest strength?
I'll nullify that as well. So yeah.
Dubois' apparent lack of cognitive process has become a bit of a running joke in the boxing community, and while it can be easy to sit here and laugh at him, the backstory as to why he is the way he is makes it more tragic, and it stops being as funny because it seems like a textbook case of abuse. Dubois' lack of autonomy becomes very obvious in his boxing career. He still lives with his father. His father's the one who chooses who's in his camp and who isn't, and in a lot of interviews his father's the one who speaks for him. So when Dubois does speak for himself, it comes across as unnatural.
I want my revenge. Tonight. I want my revenge for the robbery in the Let's go.
Wow. This is definitely fresh for me. I didn't know that. This is kind of good to know some of the background story of some of these just amazing and talented fighters. There's definitely a story to be told, whether it be his story from where he needs to say. And that's why I say these platforms should be good for fighters like him who can clear the air up, or who can say their own story and not let anyone be the narrative of your story. So I don't know how true a lot of this stuff is, but it would be nice if we could set something up with Daniel to hear from him. So I will try to reach out and we see how that can go. But other than that, as far as his boxing paralysis, IQ, what he's done in the sport, it's been amazing. Regardless of anything else, he is a warrior, he's a fighter, and most warriors and fighters will come from some backgrounds that have some tragedy. Not all, there is some who haven't been tested that way, but there are majority of them will have, even me, I've trained my son in combative sports, young age. I've trained at a young age. We've done vigorous knuckle training and push-ups and sandbags, all kinds of conditioning. Yeah, probably at the time and probably to others may seem very cruel, but when you're fashioning a warrior, now you can be very excessive and overdoing stuff, but it's usually a very fine line between the two, to be honest. All right, let's move on. And Usyk is the #1 fighter right now. He is a beast, and he did beat Daniel, but I really hope to see that rematch.
Dubois has consistently tried throughout his career to be a promoter, mimicking other fighters in their trash talk, but coming across very wooden and artificial, especially when trying to provoke a likeable and stoic character like Alexander Usyk. Even the simple act of pushing someone comes across as unnatural and not like him. I would not be surprised if his father told him beforehand, push Usyk in the stare down. Judging from the way he half commits to the push, I think Dubois was at his most dislikable when he was sent to face Joe Joyce back in 2020, when they were both undefeated.
I remember that fight.
And then knock you out. When you went back up, go on. Anyway, I'm going to win, and I'm going to win in devastating fashion.
Especially in this infamous case, when he spoke to Joe Joyce's mum.
I got tested down. If you did get ill before the fight, what's going to happen?
No, you know what? I'm going to do you a favor because you can't see yourself after putting off that. Just spare the heart. Spare the heart.
Yeah.
For context, Joe Joyce's mum is blind, so even for trash talking standards, this was below the belt and uncalled for. And I think in some ways this showed Dubois' inability to think for himself, because this was a relatively respectful build-up. There was light-hearted trash talk before this, but nothing that warranted that sort of comment. The comment even made the rounds on British news because of how out of pocket it was, and it becomes clearer and clearer that Dubois simply never ever went to school, because school teaches every child essential aspects of socialisation, which Dubois seems to be missing. Dubois ended up being stopped by Joe Joyce, lost again 3 years later versus Alexander Usyk, but since then he's been on the best run of his career, starting with stopping an undefeated Jarrell Miller, followed by undefeated title challenger Filip Hrgović. Hrgović was quite highly rated by this point, coming off a close decision win over Zhilei Zhang, and overall being seen as a very technically sound heavyweight, so Hrgović was quite heavily favoured to win the fight, but the performance that followed I think perfectly encapsulates the style of Daniel Dubois.
I'm there from Dubois. Tonight. Dubois. Speaking of the face, Dubois just 1 second to feet. She's got to be back. Right. This is target practice for the so far.
Throwing that right.
Body went to a shot. Throwing more than one punch at a time.
Early on in the fight, Dubois seemed quite clearly out of his depth. Hrgovic's right cross was landing at will, but the punches simply bounced off Dubois' skull, and he never stopped advancing.
Throwing that back in.
Yeah, well,
Whew. Chad, I'm getting the Steph Curry shake right now. All of the heavy hitting. Either Hrgović does not have a powerful punch, where it looks like he does, or Daniel has a hell of a chin and resistance to pain or something, because man, that right hand must have his name on it, but he's just walking right through it. That is something you don't regularly see. Once you get rocked with it from a heavyweight, get rocked, and you're going to do whatever you can of putting the hands up to block, or, to protect yourself. But he's heating it up like Pac-Man.
Robert Smith, referee John Laser.
Dubois forced Hrgović to fight at such a pace that Hrgović was now clearly exhausted, but Dubois was still full of energy, on his toes throwing massive punches.
Two cuts on his face. Shemayo thinks that he's a different animal now. Al which has felt it. I think the doctor's going to take a look at these cuts.
Guys, wow, the endurance. I got to call Daniel Dubois the Michael Myers of boxing. He just keeps coming. He's throwing a jab. He's throwing that right hand that has the name on it. He's just eating it up and still highly active. That is a deadly fighter. And it could also break your will to think in your mind, you can't beat this guy. He's not going down. I'm hitting him with the best shots. I'm hitting him with the combinations, landing my right hand. He's fighting, he's fighting orthodox stand. That right hand just keeps laying out. And you lose your confidence after a while. You're like, man, this guy's not going down. So eventually he just burnt him out. Wow.
Dubois defies the odds, overcomes adversity early on, and outlasts a dangerous contender in Filip Hrgović. This shows how Dubois' boxing brain has evolved. He was labelled as weak and a quitter based on the choice-inducing fights, but was now taking that adversity head-on and coming through it. That win gave Dubois the vacant IBF heavyweight title, which he would then defend in the biggest fight of his life versus Anthony Joshua, in a fight where once again...
That was a great fight, by the way. Check that fight out, Chad.
Dubois was in the best form of his career. As displayed in his two previous fights versus Otto Warling and Francis Ngannou, he seems to display a perfect balance of patience and aggression, getting 2 knockout wins over 2 opponents that Tyson Fury had struggled with and went the distance with. Ooh. But as it turns out, Daniel Dubois came to fight. Dubois immediately kicks off the fight by hitting Joshua's face and then drops him with a massive right hand at the end of the round. Joshua's never been known for his powers of recovery, so that set the tone for the rest of the fight.
Nice. Look at that will, that heart.
Man used Joshua as a punching bag for most of the fight, until Joshua himself landed a big right hand, which caused him to get overconfident, go for the finish, and get knocked out himself. This now made Dubois a serious name in the heavyweight division, and made people think he was a new man leading into the rematch versus Usyk. But as we just saw last night...
Guys, yes, wow. Dubois fights on orthodox stance as well. So, when he throws that double jab, he's following through with that right hand. You better get out the way. And because he's so tall, that reach, you're thinking it's not going to hit you. It will land square. Man, shout outs to Anthony Joshua for getting there, fighting like a warrior, and then still the will to fight to get up. There's some guys who just lay there looking around. They ain't getting up. Whenever a fighter is, I know people laugh because they don't understand, fighting and the will to stand up and continue. But whenever you see that fighter pushing to stand up, using that will to get up, that's a high reward. Hats off to that. You can laugh all you want, but I would rather be that person trying to fight to get up and just laying there, counting sheep.
Usyk proves once again why he's one of the best of all time. I think you can make a case for that being the best performance of Usyk's career so far. He looks so sharp on the counter, more dangerous offensively than we normally see him, and overall Dubois was simply too one-dimensional once again, and not good enough defensively to keep up with the class of Usyk. Dubois is still 27 and still has a future ahead of him. He can still certainly spark some heavyweights. I would absolutely love to see him fight Tyson Fury or Ajit Caballero. I actually think he'd still beat Fury. I think Fury's feet are too slow at this point to keep up with Dubois, who's going to be constantly chasing and cutting off the ring. Anyway, that's going to do it for the video. Like and subscribe, leave a comment. Goodbye.
Wow, chat, that was amazing. That was Daniel Dubois. In my eyes, still just an amazing champion. Power, battle-tested, chin-tested. Yeah, he lost from Usyk, who's like the number one. But, Daniel's only 27. Only 27. So I think, he has time. Yeah, I'm pretty sure he's going to put a hit list together of those 2 losses. And you heard what he said. He wants his revenge. I would love to see that. That was amazing. Once again, hats off to the fighters in combat sports, whether it be boxing, kickboxing, MMA, sport karate, martial arts. Hats off to all of my warriors out there, because hey, we're doing it for the sport, but we're also doing it to prove to yourself. I always say, hey, all the things you're proving is just to you. It's not to nobody. It's to go out there and do what you want to do and what you need to do to prove to yourself the heart of a champion. That will conclude this episode of The Fighter's Corner, where fighters have a voice. Until then, stay blessed. Thank you, YouTube.